Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Oh, good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning, Adefemi.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Doing very well, thank you.
Very happy to hear it. Good morning to you too, viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has offered a passage through the Strait of Hormuz starting today to any Arab or European country that expels the Israeli and US ambassadors from its territory. Meanwhile, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, his name is Majid Takht Ravanchi, he says that Tehran required no further aggression from either Israel and the United States as the single condition for ceasing hostilities. That's as several countries, including Russia, China, and France, have contacted Iran to help ease tensions and encourage de-escalation. For his part, US President Donald Trump has issued a strong warning to Iran and said that any attempt to disrupt oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz would trigger a response 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. He said so in a post on Truth Social. In this post, Trump goes on to say that if Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Additionally, we will take out easily destroyable targets that will make it virtually impossible for Iran to ever be build back. As a nation, again, death, fire, and fury will rain upon them, but I hope and pray that it does not happen. This is a gift from the United States of America to China and all of those nations that heavily use the Hormuz Strait. Hopefully, it is a gesture that will be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, Trump has also been insisting that the war with Iran has already been won and that it is almost over. But his Secretary of State, Secretary of War, actually, Pete Hegseth, he says that the war is just beginning. Now, this type of confusion is contributing to the uncertainty that we're seeing affecting global markets, but also people across the region and indeed across the world. And when asked about this discrepancy, this is what Trump had to say. Let's take a listen.
Thank you. Mr. President, you've said the war is, quote, very complete, but your defense secretary says this is just the beginning. So which is it, and how long should Americans be prepared?
Well, I think you could say both. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of building a new country, but they have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. It's all been blown up. They have no radar. They have no telecommunications, and they have no leadership. It's all gone. So, you could look at that statement. We could call it a tremendous success right now as we leave here. I could call it, or we could go further, and we're going to go further. They did. Yeah, please.
Almost over, though.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You promised the Iranian people you would help them, but it sounds like you're willing to end this fight after your military objectives have wrapped up. Isn't that a betrayal of
Will I help them? I'd like to, if they can behave, but they've been very menacing. They're great people. They have an amazing population. It's amazing, smart, brilliant, energetic. They have a great, I'd love to help them, but they have to be in a system that allows them to be helped. And right now they're in a system that only allows failure. And I don't want that. And I want a system that's not going to be attacking us. We want a system that can lead to many years of peace. And if we can't have that, we might as well get it over with right now. Yeah, please.
Okay. Meanwhile, 5 members of Iran's women's football team have been granted asylum in Australia. The players were labelled traitors after refusing to sing the Iranian national anthem during their first match at the Women's Asia Cup tournament, which is taking place in Queensland. Now, Australia's Department of Home Affairs named the 5 team members as captain Zara Gambari, midfielders Fatima Pasendide, Zara Sarbali Alisha, Mona Hamoudi, and a defender Atifa Ramenzanizadeh. Those are the players who were able to escape their hand handlers and flee to safety. Now, the remaining 6 players are believed to still be with their handlers, but they've also been offered the chance to stay in Australia should they want it, should they be able to escape. Just another example of what we're seeing around the world. But as we continue on with taking place and the issues taking place across the world, let's take a look at our newspaper headlines. As ever, we start with this day, and this day does lead with the news that the Court of Appeal has declared that the November 2025 National Convention of the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, they've declared it unlawful, ruling that the convention which produced Tanibu Turaki as national chairman was conducted in defiance of a subsisting court order. So the party has now vowed to challenge the decision at the Supreme Court of Nigeria. This day also reports on global oil. Just at the very top of the paper here, global oil prices dropped below $90 per barrel after comments from Donald Trump suggesting that the conflict involving Iran, Israel, and indeed the United States could soon be over. But we just heard him say, both things can be true at the same time. And that's even as the Dangote Petroleum Refinery did raise its petrol gantry price to 1,175 naira per litre. And this is amid continued volatility in global crude markets. Let's take a look at The Advocate. It is Tuesday, and this week's edition of The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite allows her to reflect on the progress and persistent challenges also facing women here in Nigeria. So her article this week questions whether the gender scales have truly been balanced decades after pioneering women fought for equality. And that's as she highlights the gaps in female education, in political representation, and also in leadership. As always, a wonderfully insightful read. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph this morning. The New Telegraph this morning is leading on the news that the United States Embassy in Nigeria has issued a security alert warning of possible terrorist threats against U.S. facilities and U.S.-affiliated schools in Abuja as tensions continue rising from the conflict involving Iran, Israel, and of course the United States. They have been urging citizens to heighten their vigilance and review safety precautions. Next up, we have the Daily Independent this morning, and the Daily Independent is reporting that Nigeria's adoption of compressed natural gas (CNG) vehicles as an alternative to petrol is being slowed by limited refueling infrastructure. This is despite government efforts under the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative to expand stations and promote vehicle conversion. So clearly still a lot of work to do. Next up, we have the Vanguard this morning, and the Vanguard is reporting that Aliko Dangote has retained his position as Africa's richest man with a net worth of $28.5 billion. That is according to the 2026 Africa Billionaires ranking by Forbes, as the continent's 23 billionaires collectively added over $20 billion to their fortunes in the past year. Nigeria was very strongly represented on this list, and it did include other prominent Nigerians on the list, which included Abdul Samad Rabiu, Mike Adenuga, and Femi Otedola among the ranked billionaires. Congratulations to them. Moving on to the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust does report that the People's Democratic Party may well face challenges appearing on the ballot come 2027. That is following a Court of Appeal ruling that the nullified factions national convention and the court essentially upheld the suspension of some party officials. A lot of murky waters when it comes to the political scene in Nigeria these days. And now we have an update from The Punch. The Punch newspaper is reporting that Nigeria's electricity distribution companies generated about 2.33 trillion naira in revenue in 2025. That is despite persistent complaints of poor power supply, outages, and estimated billing. Now, data from the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission showed that collections rose from about 1.8 trillion naira in 2024. That is a 29% increase. Largely, this increase has been driven by tariff adjustments and stronger billing by those discos. We've got the Daily Sun this morning, and the Daily Sun is reporting that Nigeria's stock market has continued its rally in dollar terms. This is despite global geopolitical tensions, with the benchmark NGX All-Share Index gaining some 31% in dollar terms this year. Now, we're moving on to our UK papers this morning. We're starting off with the Daily Mail, which does report and lead on Donald Trump's claim that the United States and Israeli attacks on Iran is a short-term excursion and that the operation is very far ahead of schedule. schedule. The Financial Times, for its part, is leading with the news that G7 countries are preparing one of the largest releases of oil reserves in history in response to the rise in energy prices amid the Middle Eastern conflict. So those are newspaper headlines and your World Brief stories. Love to hear your thoughts.
For me, it's the way the American president lies with reckless abandon that I can't get my mind over. I mean, one of the lies he lied, the lies, too many lies. He said he sank all of the Iranian ship. That's a lie. It was reported on Sri Lankan newspaper because the ships, the Dana that they sank, was part of the ships coming back from India. They had a military drill. And that's why there was a contention of, why will you sink a ship on international water? They were not combat active ships. They were not ships coming into the combat. They claim they sank over 30 of them. Iran has over 95 ships. Mm-hmm. You still have over 65. In fact, there was one of the ships in the port of Tricomale in Sri Lanka that was docked there. So under international convention, Sri Lanka protected those ships and brought them there. Mm-hmm. There are still many Iranian ships on the water, and an American president just comes out to lie. See, Trump has so demystified the role of an American president. He has so downgraded the role that anybody that comes after him will be a tall order. Because in my lifetime, taking an American president seriously after Trump, it's almost scary. And why is he saying all of this? Because the crude oil prices went up. As I yesterday in America, in some stations, they were selling up to $3.70 per gallon of fuel. And it's gone haywire. Mm-hmm. So he knows that the social pressure is already hitting him. That's why he's having conflicting reports. And I don't know why Americans and people that are supporting those things. This was the same man, Femi. The Republicans blamed Obama because he saluted a Marine officer with a cup of latte in his hands. Remember the Latte Gate scandal? When they had a designated transfer, Trump was wearing his MAGA hats and saluting people that fought and died in a war that you caused. The level of disrespect. And as we speak, the Epstein file is still going on. It is now obvious, and I'm kudos to other GCC nations, because what they're trying to do is now to intervene, to see how peace will come. Part of the conversation, you're not hearing from Iran saying that if they can expel some Iranian ambassadors, they're going to open the Strait of Hormuz,
yes,
which might be a stretch anyway. But you can now see that all of the conversation going on with the GCC is because he knows he's in losing end. That's why he's now saying all of this. And this was what I said last week. He should just declare victory to his MAGA base and say, okay, we've killed Khamenei and move on. Because there is no way out, because it has now become a war of attrition. And all the things he thought he was going to gain, he thought it was like Venezuela that you take Maduro off. He's now losing in all of it. The GCC nation will be affected. He just took us on a merry-go-round for nothing. Look at the Khamenei that they killed. This was the same person that passed a fatwa. And they must not have protection. His son that they've put in as leader now, Motshaba, he's more hardline. He's in cahoots with the IRGC. Why can't this guy just let the world breathe? Have you killed late or you're long?
That's the question. Thanks for
All right, that translates to?
What is all of this, for Christ's sake? Okay. People are suffering, you're killing them all for nothing.
Okay.
All your base is against you. Nick Fuentes, Candice Owen, Tucker Carlson, all of them are against you. Nick Fuentes the other day was saying, vote Democrats.
Okay, let me talk about the 5 members of the Iranian women's national team who have now been granted asylum in Australia. They went there for the 2026 AFC Women's Asian Cup. Mm-hmm. And I just as part of the war, because when we talk about war, it has far-reaching ramifications, and there are different expressions through different medium. Protest or even participation or lack of participation, acceptance or lack of acceptance, support or lack of support is expressed in different ways. And I think one of the things that it demonstrates is the freedom of choice. And that's what you find in a war like this, where you have people who are pro, people who are against. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's always that competition as to how many people are for, how many people are against, based on different reasons. Now, for these 5 players, make up of one, the team captain, who is also a record goal scorer in the Iranian women's team, 3 midfielders, 1 defender. They refused to sing the Iranian national anthem in their opening game against South Korea on the 2nd of March. And as a result of this, they faced immense pressure from both their caretakers who went with them to the competition in Australia and back home where they were touted as wartime traitors. As a result of this, a hand of fellowship, if I put it that way, was extended to them by the Australian government, supported by a few other people around the world, saying, irrespective of where you stand, you should be free to choose what you believe in, what you support, and you shouldn't be attacked or come under, persecution for that. Exactly. And so they were granted asylum. They were able to escape through what is now called the midnight escape. But far-reaching on this is what would then happen to their family members back home, because this is a very risky choice for them, and it just gives a spotlight into what real people, real Iranians are facing. Whether you're for or against the war, you should not be persecuted based on your decision to choose or your protest, or that silent protest by not, choosing to not sing the national anthem. A hand has been extended to the other players, but they haven't received that yet, because like I said, when you talk about asylum seekers, we talk about migration, there's a big conversation around what they leave behind in pursuit of protection of their lives based on persecution. Now, moving on from that, I'd like to also talk about, since I'm still focusing on women, I very, very particularly would spotlight the advocates this morning. And that's because when we talk about International Women's Day, it's usually a big day, pomp and pageantry, a lot of events done. But when we look at the real impact, and this is usually the criticism of some of these events, is that when it comes to actual change, how far have we moved since we started celebrating the day? To what extent have we achieved gender equity or gender parity in our world today based on a day such as that? And I'm glad that Onikepo Braithwaite took the time to actually chart that. And if you look at the conclusion of that matter, we haven't gone very far at all. She started the article by acknowledging and thanking President Rukai Obagbena for acknowledging her and recognizing her and other women at the Arise News Women of Impact Awards on Sunday. But beyond that, she was able to reflect on even her own mother, who was the first and shamefully, I must say, only female NBA chairman thus far, and chairperson thus far. And I have to say that they have an opportunity this season. I believe at least 2 women are vying for the position as president of the NBA, and this might position, provide an ample opportunity or a great opportunity to right that wrong. She's talked about even the bastion of democracy, America, who's never had a female president. But let's, keep it back home in Nigeria. She looked at education, the fact that women are disproportionately represented in education. And if you're going to achieve anything when it comes to gender parity, you have to look at education. Girls make up more than half of the numbers of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Indeed. I'm bringing out the numbers because we have a real issue on our hands. It's not about beautiful ceremonies, dresses, flowers, and nice things for International Women's Day. It's to find out the real issues and to see to what extent we're fixing it. Because a gender-equal world, a gender-equal Nigeria, where there's gender equity, is a better system and a better society for us, economically and socially. And so she talked about that and looked at even representation in government, that since the first senator, to what we only have 4 female senators currently, so whether it be appointments, she praised the Kwara State government, and I highlight that because there's a legislature in place to have 35% women in political appointments. The president, I repeat, had made a promise to Nigerian women that he would ensure that his government has a representation of women at 35%. He hasn't lived up to that. So beyond speeches and congratulatory messages on the 8th of March every year, let us put our mouths, put the work in and ensure that in our lifetime we actually achieve gender parity. It's not just a celebration, it's actual work that has to be done. And if it involves legislation with the special seats bill, then so be it until we get there.
Thank you, Ayo.
It seems to me that the major editorial point about the Iranian female footballers in Australia is about the intersection between sports and politics. No matter how hard we try to say, politics should be separated from sport, we have seen again and again since the 1936 Munich Olympics that politics is actually a huge part of politics and of sports, and we have seen it again in the case of the Iranian female footballers, and also as we're likely to see in the World Cup, where Iran male footballers who have been grouped in the same category as the United States are contemplating whether to be part of that 2026 World Cup or not. In the case of these girls, they refused to sing the Iranian national anthem in protest in their first march against South Korea. But they did subsequently in their march with Australia, and also in their final march on Sunday with the Philippines, which people believe is as a result of threats and pressures put upon them. And now 5 of them have decided to seek immigration visa asylum in Australia, which Albanese, and that's the Prime Minister, and also the Immigration Minister, have gladly provided. But there was also another level of politics into it. President Trump wrote on Truth Social that if Australia was not willing to grant them, this humanitarian visa, as they call it, the United States will be ready to do so. So you see that, interconnection between sports and politics. But the objective, of course, is that, nobody should be victimized on the basis of their, choice. But the remaining 6 to whom that same opportunity has been extended are saying they would rather go back home because they don't want their relatives to be victimized back in Tehran or Iran or wherever they are inside that territory. But to go quickly to the IRGC, saying that countries that expel U.S. diplomats will be given free passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, I don't think anybody should jubilate over that. The IRGC, is part of the Iranian establishment. But the other part of it is about trade. 20% of global trade, either in oil or gas, going through that choke point between Iran and Oman. Would businesses, vessel owners now say because the IRGC says it will give them protection, go through that route? The main thing in international trade law is a principle called Incoterms. Incoterms, I think the latest one is Incoterms 2020, which is about risk and responsibility and how trade contracts are effectuated. Now, with oil and waterway traffic, the basic Incoterm that applies is what you call CIF, cost, insurance, and freight. Now, what we see is that many insurance companies guaranteeing many of these vessels, are they likely to take the risk? Are they going to go with the word of IRGC and say because IRGC has said we will give you safe passage, we will now bring back insurance? No, insurance costs have gone up. Freight costs have gone up because of the risk and responsibility involved in trade terms. Not even with President Trump saying that, you provide a guarantee of passage, he will seize the Strait of Hormuz. The oil price may have gone down, 6.1% with regard to light sweet, 6% with regard to Brent crude. But that in itself is not enough guarantee. But finally, on the question of oil, I had said previously that what happens to us here in Nigeria? The G7 met on Monday, yesterday, and the G7, they expressed concern. They asked for immediate de-escalation. That's what the UK representative articulated of the conflict in the Middle East. But they didn't go far as to agree to release their strategic reserves to drive down the price of fuel. The only story that I find there in the last 24 hours is South Korea saying that it's going to put a cap on fuel prices. Is Nigeria willing to go that far to protect the Nigerian people? If Nigeria does that, what will be the implications? And then we go to the residual point about support for the Dangote refinery in terms of what will provide for that refinery. Even if all our crude oil supplies have been sold in the futures market, but can anything be done to protect us? When I saw 1,267, or what was it that I saw this morning? It was over 1,200 naira. My heart sank. It is part of the duty of government to protect us, to look out for our welfare.
Yes.
If they give me free food, I will collect.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ruby.
I mean, just think of the impact on businesses. Businesses that use diesel.
Yeah.
And they will have to factor it
Even
into
on our,
And the impact on price.
on our blood pressure.